your breakfast might be killing your potency. What seems like an innocent habit, repeated every morning, could be silently choking the intimate circulation of thousands of men without them realizing it. I am Dr. Ana Esperanza, a physician specializing in men's health, and today I will reveal which treacherous habit this is and why it has been linked to silent yet devastating drops in male vitality. Write in the comments. I want the truth to show you refuse to be deceived. And if you stay until the very end, you'll discover the one detail that could completely transform the way you look at your breakfast and at your male potency. You wake up every morning convinced you're starting the day the right way. You shuffle into the kitchen, set the table, reach for the same food you've trusted for decades. The smell rises into the air, familiar, comforting, almost sacred. The sound of the spoon clinking against the cup, the crunch of the first bite, all of it feels like a ritual of safety. It's how you've begun your mornings for years, maybe even most of your life. But what you never imagined is that this ritual, this seemingly innocent gesture, might be silently weakening you where it matters most. It might be suffocating your intimate circulation, a process so subtle, so hidden, that most men don't realize what's happening until the damage is irreversible. Science has proven it again and again. Circulation is the very foundation of male vitality. It is what fuels energy, focus, strength, and above all, potency. Without healthy blood flow, nothing else functions the way it should. And yet, countless men, especially those who cross the threshold of 60, begin to notice small cracks forming. At first it's fatigue that lingers. Then it's the occasional failure they brush off as stress. Then it's a gradual but undeniable drop in confidence. The body whispers its warnings, but the man dismisses them. And all the while, the one thing he repeats every morning, the one ritual he thinks is protecting him, is quietly feeding the decline. The unsettling part is this. Ask almost any general practitioner and they'll tell you the habit is harmless, maybe even healthy. That's exactly the trap. Because what seems like a shield can sometimes be the blade. What appears to protect may be draining your masculine vitality with every sip, every bite, every repetition of the morning routine. Pause for a second. How many men over 60 do you know who still carry the drive, the stamina, the confidence they once had in their 40s? Very few. And what if I told you many of them share the same ritual that slowly weakens the majority? A tiny detail hidden in the everyday breakfast plate, acting like a rusted chain slowly tightening around their vitality. For decades, this practice was celebrated. It was considered discipline. Doctors, advertisements, even families passed it down as wisdom. Start the day with this and you'll live longer, they said. But new evidence is challenging that comforting narrative. Because here's the cruel twist. Within this habit, there are components that strengthen, yes, nutrients that support arteries, that help nitric oxide production, that momentarily fuel circulation. But hiding alongside them are villains, ingredients that disrupt hormones, that inflame delicate blood vessels, that chip away at potency one morning at a time. It's a silent tug of war, but one side is losing badly. And so men who believe they are doing everything right slowly lose their edge, their firmness, their vitality, their very sense of self, all because they trusted a ritual nobody dared to question. After all, who wants to look at something as ordinary, as comforting as breakfast and ask, could this be destroying me? One little-known study looked directly at men over 60 and uncovered something chilling. Small changes in breakfast habits were tied to staggering differences in intimate performance, not over decades, but in a matter of months. Yet you've never heard of it. Why? Because it's too uncomfortable. Because saying impotence could begin with what's on your plate at 7 a.m. breaks a taboo almost no one is willing to touch. But this isn't a distant theory. It's not speculation. It could be happening to you right now, this morning, tomorrow morning, every morning. Each repetition adds a scar you cannot see, scars that build up until one day the cost arrives in full, and when it does, it's too late to undo. I know, part of you wants to reject this. It sounds too extreme, too sinister, but ask yourself, how many times has science reversed its position on what it once called healthy? Cigarettes were once prescribed for stress. Sugar was promoted as an essential energy source. Processed margarine was advertised as a heart protector. Now we know the truth. All of them were silent poisons. If history has proven anything, it's that what you think is safe today may be tomorrow's most damning mistake. What if your breakfast is already on that list? And maybe you ask, Doctor, if this is true, why haven't I heard about it before? The answer is simple and brutal. Money. Industry wants you to keep consuming, to keep trusting. Doctors, they don't want to disrupt tradition. It's easier to hand out prescriptions than to wage war on deeply ingrained habits. An honest warning could collapse entire markets. And so the silence continues. But silence doesn't mean safety, because when circulation falters, the damage isn't confined to intimacy. Your whole body suffers. Chronic fatigue, foggy memory, aches that creep into your joints, muscle loss you can't explain, mood swings, energy that once flowed easily now slipping away, and you never connect it back to breakfast. Because it's gradual, because it's painless, because it's disguised as normal aging, but it isn't normal. It's the slow drip of poison you've been swallowing each morning. Now imagine tomorrow. You sit down. You repeat the same ritual. You convince yourself you're safe. But in truth, you're carving another invisible scar inside. You don't see it. You don't feel it. But the countdown is ticking. Each breakfast is another step toward the line you don't want to cross. And here is the most disturbing truth. There is a single detail in this habit that separates the few men who hold on to their potency from the many who lose it. A detail so small, so easy to overlook, that nearly everyone misses it. But once revealed, it changes everything. Because what looks healthy, what feels safe, could in reality be the beginning of something far darker, far more dangerous. When most men think about their morning habits, they believe they're defending themselves against age. Waking early, setting the table, preparing the same meal every single day. It feels like discipline, almost like a shield against time. But the truth is more unsettling. The very ritual they believe is protecting them may be the hidden force chipping away at their strength. The trouble is, nobody notices at first. It begins with subtle fatigue that clings no matter how much you rest. Then, quiet failures in intimacy, dismissed as stress. Later it becomes harder to focus, harder to carry energy through the day. Muscles seem weaker, reactions slower, and when impotence finally arrives, it doesn't come as a sudden event. It's the final act of a slow decline, a decline that was fed, meal by meal, sip by sip, each morning at the table. I'll never forget Alvaro, 64 years old, proud of his discipline. He lived by the clock, up at 6 sharp, breakfast always the same. The smell of coffee filling the kitchen, the scrape of a knife on bread, the ritual unfolding like a script. He believed this routine kept him safe. He didn't smoke. He drank only on occasion. He walked daily through the park near his home. To the outside world, Alvaro was the image of healthy aging, but inside, a shadow was growing. At 61, he began noticing cracks. One night he couldn't perform. He told himself it was work stress. The next time, he blamed poor sleep. The third time, he avoided his wife's eyes and whispered, "Maybe I'm just getting old." From that moment, his confidence began to unravel. The bedroom grew colder, his conversations shorter. Mornings became heavier, his energy fractured before the day even began. He described it once as living in a body that no longer felt like mine. His medical tests told him nothing alarming. Cholesterol fine, blood pressure stable, heart strong. His doctor reassured him he was aging well, but Alvaro felt the truth in his bones. Something was wrong. His arteries, unseen, had become rigid, inflamed, older than they should have been. And the only constant he never questioned was the one thing he repeated every morning, his breakfast. He confessed once that he felt betrayed, not only by his body, but by the very discipline he had trusted all his life. The foods that were supposed to nourish him had become accomplices in his decline. His downfall wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow erosion, invisible, silent, and merciless. And Alvaro was far from unique. In a quiet European university, A group of researchers conducted a study that should have changed everything. They followed dozens of men between 60 and 70, men who lived disciplined lives, who believed they ate healthy breakfasts. The results were shocking. A significant portion of those men showed not only chronic fatigue, but measurable decline in circulation and sexual function. The link wasn't alcohol, it wasn't smoking, it wasn't lack of exercise, it was their breakfast. The study revealed that certain common breakfast foods, refined breads, processed spreads, sugary drinks disguised as natural, were silently inflaming arteries and choking off nitric oxide production, the very molecule responsible for blood flow. The men who consumed them most regularly reported the steepest declines. The scientists who led the study expected attention, maybe even praise for uncovering such a vital connection. Instead, they were met with silence. Journals rejected the paper. Conferences brushed it aside. The findings were too inconvenient, too dangerous, because if the truth were accepted, it would mean admitting that an entire culture of healthy breakfast was in fact a slow poison. Industries would collapse. Pharmacies would lose billions. Doctors would be forced to question decades of advice. So the study was buried, filed away, forgotten, silenced. It never reached the men who needed it most. Think about what that means. Men like Alvaro, disciplined, careful, following every piece of conventional wisdom, still fail. They walked right into the trap, never realizing the poison was waiting for them at the breakfast table. Each day they repeated the ritual. Each day they swallowed another invisible scar, and by the time they noticed the decline, the damage was already carved deep into their bodies. And why the silence? Because it is far easier and far more profitable to prescribe a pill than to confront the food on people's plates. It's more comfortable to tell men they are just getting older than to admit that the very rituals they trust are betraying them. Industries thrive on that lie. Doctors hide behind it, and men pay the price in silence. But silence doesn't stop reality. Tomorrow you might sit down again. You'll pour the same drink, take the same bite, convince yourself you're safe, but you won't be, because every repetition leaves a mark, another scar inside the arteries, another tick of the clock, another step closer to the edge Alvaro reached. Alvaro's story should have been shouted from rooftops. That forgotten study should have been plastered across headlines, but it wasn't. And because it wasn't, thousands of men are right now sitting at their tables, repeating the ritual that will strip them of the very thing that defines them. And now, you must face a question Alvaro never asked soon enough. How long will you keep ignoring this? How many warning signs will you dismiss before you realize the truth? Because this isn't about fate. It isn't about destiny. It's about choice. And every breakfast, you are making that choice, whether you realize it or not. Alvaro's fall wasn't an accident. That study wasn't a fluke. They were warnings. Warnings silenced because they were too dangerous to share. Warnings you were never supposed to hear. But now you have, and you cannot unknow it. Tomorrow morning, when you sit at the table, the food in front of you will not be neutral. It will either be your ally or your executioner. And here is the most haunting truth. This habit carries an even darker effect than what you've heard so far. An effect that doesn't only strip intimacy, but spreads into every corner of a man's life. And that effect is what I'm going to reveal next. And still, this isn't the most terrifying consequence of this habit. By now, you understand that what looks safe may hide a darker truth. But most men still don't grasp the real cruelty of this habit. The danger is not only in the food itself, but in the fragile balance it disrupts every single morning. Each breakfast becomes a silent gamble. On one side, nutrients that promise quick energy. On the other, hidden elements that corrode circulation, choke hormones, and chip away at potency. And in this quiet war, the destructive side is winning. That is the paradox. The very ritual that seems to give you energy in the morning is the same one draining you of your strength at night. It's a false contract. You receive a spark today, but pay for it with your vitality tomorrow. And men rarely notice until the debt is so large it cannot be repaid. One day, they discover their body no longer answers, And what they thought was age was really years of betrayal. Many men over 60 live trapped in this illusion. They think their breakfast is a shield against weakness. They trust the comfort of routine, the security of repetition. But that comfort is the disguise, because what feels disciplined is in fact the silent hand dismantling their masculinity. Like a drug that soothes pain but poisons the liver, this ritual gives a fleeting lift while feeding decay beneath the surface. Here's what few men admit. The body at 60 is not the body at 40. At 40, the arteries still bend, hormones still flow with force, the metabolism still compensates. But at 60, every mistake weighs heavier, every wrong bite cuts deeper, the body no longer forgives. The foods that once seemed harmless become the trigger for collapse. And when collapse comes, it arrives in silence. Do not think this is just about intimacy. This breakfast habit leaves fingerprints across the whole body. Chronic fatigue, fogged memory, loss of muscle, irritability, restless sleep. Each symptom feels disconnected, but they are all threads of the same web, a circulation that is no longer strong enough to carry life where it needs to go. The cruelty lies in the silence. There is no sharp pain to alert you, no sudden crisis, just slow erosion. Day after day, invisible scars carved inside you, until one night, one morning, you realize the truth. By then, the foundation is already cracked. You look in the mirror and the man staring back at you feels older, weaker, less certain than you ever imagined. There is a line, invisible, unspoken, that every man risks crossing, a point of no return. Once crossed, it becomes almost impossible to claw back what was lost. No standard test reveals it. No doctor warns you in advance. You only discover the line when it's behind you, when your body refuses and your confidence collapses. And the most brutal part, you were the one feeding the fall all along. Think of the psychology of that moment. A man who loses his vitality doesn't just lose performance. He loses identity. The silence in the bedroom spreads to silence in his soul. He speaks less. He avoids eye contact. He stops believing in himself. He accepts decline as fate, when in truth, it was choice. Not a choice he meant to make, but a choice repeated each morning, disguised as discipline. Here is the brutal truth. Each breakfast you think is protecting you may be acting like a thief. It steals what matters most while distracting you with the illusion of safety. And with every repetition, the debt grows larger. Some scattered studies have already whispered it. Certain breakfast staples interfere directly with nitric oxide, the molecule that opens blood vessels. Without it, intimacy becomes impossible. Others point to cheap fats and refined sugars, creating slow, silent inflammation that hardens arteries over years. But almost no one connects the dots, because connecting them would mean admitting that the foods celebrated as healthy starts are in fact silent killers. The paradox is cruel. Some men claim they feel energized when they eat this way, and maybe they do, for a short time. But that energy is borrowed, stolen from the future. It's a spark before darkness, and when the bill comes due, it's devastating. The body is a system of balance. Push it one way, it breaks another. Your breakfast ritual may feel like order, like control, but it is slowly dismantling that balance. Each bite, each sip, another crack in the system that sustains your potency. You think you are doing the right thing, but you are feeding the very process that destroys you. There are men, rare but real, who escape. They notice the signs early. They change before the line is crossed. They hold on to their vitality long past 60, but they are exceptions. Most men, blinded by routine, walk willingly toward the cliff, never questioning the path. And here is the chilling detail. Sometimes it doesn't take much to decide the outcome. One detail, one change, one choice. That can mean the difference between a man who still stands firm at 70 and a man who collapses into silence at 62. Two men, same age, same effort, same background, but one keeps his fire while the other fades. The only difference is that one saw the truth and the other stayed blind. So I ask you, which side are you on? Because the next breakfast you eat is not neutral. It could be just another morning, or it could be the step that locks in your fate. This is not exaggeration. This is not alarmism. This is reality. Alvaro's story was not an exception. The forgotten study was not a mistake. They were warnings, silenced warnings, and every man who ignores them becomes part of the same tragedy. Now you know, you cannot go back to ignorance. Tomorrow morning when you sit at your table, your food will be more than food. It will be your choice, your ally, or your executioner. And here is what makes it truly haunting. Hidden within this ritual is one tiny detail, a detail almost no one notices, a detail that separates those who keep their potency from those who lose it forever. That detail is what I will reveal in the conclusion. There is a hidden detail in this habit that can change everything forever. We have reached the moment almost no one dares to face. For all this time, I've been speaking of a morning ritual so ordinary, so ingrained, that it repeats in millions of homes every single day. A ritual promoted as healthy, even sacred. Yet behind its mask lies betrayal. What steals male vitality after 60 is not simply age. It is this habit, repeated daily, disguised as discipline, that corrodes silently until nothing is left. Here is the truth, raw and undeniable. The danger is not in one single item, but in the toxic combination most men repeat without thinking. The sweetened coffee that spikes and damages your blood vessels. The white bread spread with cheap margarine that inflames your arteries. The packaged juice that pretends to be natural but floods your body with hidden sugars. Each alone seems harmless. Together every morning, they form a storm that strangles circulation, suppresses nitric oxide, and starves the very force that drives potency. The mechanism is merciless. The sugar creates violent spikes that scar your vessels. The fats ignite chronic inflammation. The refined flour burns fast, leaving you drained and destabilized. Slowly, arteries harden, hormones weaken, blood fails to flow where it must. You think you are simply aging, but you are really being eroded by a ritual you trusted. And this is the revelation. Impotence in so many cases is not fate. It is not destiny. It is not some cruel punishment of time. It is the direct result of years spent repeating a breakfast that looks innocent but works like poison. The foods you thought kept you strong were in fact feeding your decline. Now you understand why this truth is buried. To admit it would shatter industries. It would collapse entire markets. It would force doctors to rewrite advice given for decades. It would mean admitting that men across the world were betrayed at their own tables. So the truth was silenced, and you were told it was simply old age. But now you know, and you can no longer pretend ignorance. Tomorrow morning you will face a choice. Will you repeat the ritual, serving yourself the very poison that strips you of your masculinity? Or will you break the cycle before it breaks you? This is your turning point. Most men never reach it. They continue blindly until the day the line is crossed and nothing can be recovered. But you have the warning Alvaro never had. You know what the forgotten study revealed, and you hold the power to decide. So I ask you now, make a pact with yourself. Write in the comments, "I will not feed the lie." That phrase is your declaration, your line in the sand. The moment you refuse to be deceived any longer, and subscribe to this channel. Because what you've learned today is only the first hidden truth. There are other habits, other routines, other poisons men consume in silence, and here they will all be exposed. Your breakfast may have been your enemy until today, but tomorrow it can be your ally, and that choice begins right now.